Callan Ride's hands clenched the flight yoke tighter than regulation allowed. His heart pounded in sync with the flashing red indicators across his cockpit. Damage to thrusters, shield core failure. Life support running on backup, outside the canopy. Space flickered in chaotic bursts of plasma as 3 Varnock interceptors closed in. They moved like predators, organic-looking hulls slithering through zero-G. Each pulse of their maneuvering thrusters like a snake's breath before a strike. Callan's fighter, a Block 5 Terran Striker, was built for agility, but that meant nothing now. One of the alien plasma bolts had grazed his port engine and sent his trajectory spinning into the gravity well of Kairos 9. Kairos 9, a dead planet, a no-man's land wrapped in orbital mines, faded treaties, and unsanctioned rumors. No one came here willingly. The second plasma blast hit. Callan didn't scream, but his vision flashed white as the cockpit shook. Artificial gravity disengaged. Altitude descent at 12,000 meters per minute, the onboard AI sputtered. Its voice slurred from the damage. No time to eject. No time to think. He punched manual override, forced the battered ship into a steep, blistering dive through the upper atmosphere. Fire licked across the hull as friction tore at the remnants of the outer plating. Behind him, the Varnock fighters hesitated. They never pursued into atmosphere. Too risky. Come on, Callan muttered. The glass of his cockpit canopy glowed a furious orange. Altitude 14,000 meters. Nose too steep. Correction needed. Control arms snapped to compensate. Then everything went white. He woke up to silence. The sky above was deep crimson, heavy with ash. His ears rang with a high, pulsing note. For a moment, Callan couldn't move. Then he realized he was still strapped to the half-exposed remains of his cockpit, now nothing more than molten wreckage. Embedded in a jagged ravine, every bone ached. His left arm was bleeding, not too deep, but the impact had cracked a rib, maybe 2. The cockpit's emergency ejection system had failed, but the seat harness had saved him from being thrown straight into a steel hull at terminal velocity. Callan pulled himself free, groaning as joints protested. His flight suit was scorched, and his helmet visor had fractured. He blinked rapidly, forcing his eyes to adjust. There was no time to nurse injuries. He stumbled out into the open. The crash site lay within a vast field of derelict machines, hulking metallic carcasses. Scorched plating, shattered turrets, some human, some alien. The ground beneath him was a graveyard of the forgotten war. Tall, black spires loomed at the horizon, like rusted fingers reaching for a sky long dead. His ship was beyond salvaging. Callan checked his gear. A half-charged pulse pistol, 1 survival pack, and the neural-linked flight suit still active, barely. Then he saw it, rising out of a collapsed mound of wreckage, half-buried, half-sunken, was the broken frame of a Varnock fighter. Its surface was matte black, curved like an insect's wing. Several gashes along the side revealed exposed power cores. The front canopy was shattered, but the thruster ports, they still glowed faintly. He limped toward it. The hull was hot. The alien metal pulsed gently under his fingers, like a breathing organism in stasis. These ships weren't just machines. They were semi-biological constructs, interfaced with their pilots through a neural symbiotic link. One wrong touch could trigger a defense reflex. Callan pulled his hand back. Not yet. By nightfall, the temperature had dropped drastically. Kairos 9 was cold, too cold for natural life, but Callan had grown used to that kind of silence. What disturbed him wasn't the stillness, it was the movement. Across the ridge, just beyond the field of wreckage, dim lights began to flicker. Hover drones, Varnock patrols. He ducked behind a fractured metal slab and watched. They were sweeping the area slowly, methodically. The Varnock were not known for their mercy or their hesitation. If they found him, they wouldn't ask questions. He activated the neural map embedded in his visor. The terrain lit up in dull red overlays. Kairos 9 used to be a Terran forward outpost during the early expansion. Wars then abandoned when the ceasefire failed, but there was something wrong. The map showed no friendly structures, no safe zones, no beacons. Callan zoomed out. The nearest human signal, an emergency relay buoy, was gone. Either destroyed or buried. Every human marker on the map read the same. Dead zone. He stared at the cold data. This wasn't just a no man's land. It was a graveyard. And the grave diggers were back. He crawled back to the wrecked Varnock fighter, hands trembling from cold and adrenaline. From a hidden compartment in his suit, he pulled a slender diagnostic rod, intended for emergency code decryption. Not alien engineering, but it was all he had. He knelt beside the alien hull. The fighter didn't react at first, but when he pressed the rod into a small orifice, slightly recessed beneath the cockpit escarred frame, the surface shimmered. A low hum emerged. He whispered more to himself than to the machine, "If you're still alive in there, I need a ride." A ripple of blue light arced across the surface. Something stirred inside. Callan sat back on his heels. For the first time since crashing, a thought hit him. Not fear, not pain. Memory. He remembered the day his older brother died, also a pilot, also shot down in hostile space. And the hollow metal their mother received. A polished coin traded for a corpse never recovered. He'd sworn to never die like that, not nameless, not alone. But Kairos 9 didn't give second chances, unless his gaze returned to the fighter. Unless he turned their own weapon against them, and gave this dead world a reason to remember his name. Callan Ride had always believed that survival wasn't a matter of strength, it was a matter of stubbornness. He wasn't supposed to be up here, not in this war. Not in this quadrant, not in this damn body. Born in the underlevel tenements of Orbital 4. Callan had spent most of his youth beneath layers of alloy, grease, and forgotten people. His mother worked 3 shifts recycling damaged drone parts. His father, when he hadn't drunk himself into silence, taught him how to gut a broken thruster engine before he turned 12. He was a prodigy with a spanner and neural welder. Quiet, fast, methodical, not brilliant, not celebrated, but precise. When the draft scans came, they dismissed him within seconds. Non-priority genome, no combat utility. Translation, not genetically enhanced, not from a favorable family line. And not worth investing in. He wasn't born to be a soldier. Wasn't bred to fight the Varnock. But that didn't stop the Varnock from burning his family alive during the second surge. His sector wasn't even strategic. It was a routing error, they said. A misfired command drone had flagged Orbital 4 as a military outpost. 2,000 civilians, gone in 14 minutes. That was the last time Callan Ride touched a civilian toolkit. 3 weeks later, he forged his credentials, faked a neuroscan, and enlisted into Terran Forward Unit 17 as a technician. He never left. 5 years later, he was sitting in the cockpit of a Block 5 Striker, racking up maneuver kills faster than any pilot in his squadron. Not out of vengeance, not even out of loyalty, just a quiet, stubborn refusal to let what happened to him happen again. He crouched now beside the alien fighter's ruined frame, the alien dusk of Kairos 9 draping everything in deep purple and silver. His breath misted inside his cracked helmet. There was no sound but the dry whisper of wind over metal graves. Callan brushed dirt from the exposed junction port of the Varnock ship. The design was alien, yes, but familiar, biotech-based, with integrated sensory pathways that pulsed faintly under his gloved fingertips, like capillaries under warm skin. He reached into the satchel he'd yanked from his own wrecked cockpit. Inside were fragments of Terran circuit modules, a damaged transcode relay, and the neural link node from his helmet. Not much, but maybe enough. The idea was insane. It also might be his only chance. Callan's fingers worked silently, peeling back armor panels and splicing wires with a makeshift fusion knife. The gauntlet on his left wrist sparked as he ripped out the module housing the biometric signature lock. If the Varnock ship still had any functioning AI protocols, it would reject him instantly, unless he convinced it otherwise. He tapped a narrow depression on the console beneath the canopy. The hull responded with a shimmer. A faint holographic interface burst to life, flickering and warped. The glyphs danced, curved, aggressive lines that most Terrans couldn't decipher. But Callan had studied enough during his off-rotation shifts. Varnock interfaces were not written, they were asterisk-mapped. Each symbol was an emotional predictive trigger. Their machines were designed to feel before they thought. And if he could mimic the right sequence of emotional data, fear, purpose, resilience, the ship might not kill him on the spot. He uploaded a compressed memory imprint from his neural recorder into the mainframe socket. The image of a child crying over her mother's grave, the heat blast ripple of Orbital 4 burning, and the silent, endless hum of deep space. The interface froze, then pulsed. A line of static scrolled across the projection. The glyphs reappeared, this time slower. More deliberate, translation crude but readable scrawled itself into his HUD. Query, pilot or host, Callan stared. Host, that's what they call their pilots, merely vessels. He tapped a response. Interim pilot, human intention. The interface paused. A strange humming sound vibrated beneath him. Then, permission, conditional. Sync protocol, modified. The console unlocked. Callan exhaled, long and shaky. He removed his helmet and dropped to the cold metal floor of the alien cockpit, placing the neural node directly against the activation plate. A faint click, then heat. The link surged like a tide through his skull. Alien memories, foreign shapes, colors that didn't exist in human vocabulary, flashed across his consciousness. Searing pain, brief then gone. He felt it before he understood it. The ship was alive, not in the biological sense, but in the way a storm was alive. In the way a blade remembered the hand that forged it. And it had been forged for death, not this time, Callan thought. Night deepened. The patrols drew closer. He could see their beams sweeping across wreckage. But he didn't move. He sat in the cockpit, arms across his chest, eyes half-lidded, sinking slowly with the machine. Every few seconds, a new sequence blinked into the HUD. Language patterns, flight logs, voice prints. He skipped most of them. No time, he only needed propulsion, navigation, control. His thoughts raced. If I can bypass the guidance lockouts, patch Terran code into the targeting array, and rework the neural feed into a dual-loop response chain. His hands moved on instinct. He pulled wires from his own broken compact, fused them into the AI access port, pulled plating from his gauntlet, and rerouted it to act as a stabilizer. His engineering training was kicking in, not as a warrior, but as a builder. This wasn't about domination. This was about communication. About finding a shared language with a machine born to kill him. And maybe, just maybe, giving it another purpose. 1 hour passed. Then 2, the wind grew louder. The drones were getting closer. The ridge glowed faintly with scanning pulses, but Callan didn't flinch. He stared at the holographic display one final time, then whispered, "If I can't send a signal for help." He ran his hand across the throttle, now a strange mix of Terran steel and alien tendrils. "I'll be the signal," and with that he activated the core. The ship roared to life. The smell of burnt flesh and scorched circuits clung to the air like a warning. Callan collapsed against the cold hull of the alien fighter, breathing in short, ragged gasps. Sparks danced from the exposed neural relay he'd just fused, improperly. He now realized, as a jolt of electromagnetic feedback surged through his left arm and into his spine. His muscles locked for a second, then went limp. Blood trickled from his temple where he'd slammed into the edge of the control housing. His vision doubled. The edges of his helmet display flickered, glitching as his neural interface destabilized. The pain meant one thing: the alien circuitry was still alive. And it hated him. He'd spent hours splicing Terran circuitry into Varnock wetware. Threading pulse converters through fiber clusters that pulsed like veins. The ship resisted every step. Systems rebooted and rejected input. Panels locked without reason. Heat builds surged without warning. It wasn't just broken, it was fighting back. But Callan kept working. Even as his hands trembled and fever crept under his skin like a silent fire, he welded, rewired, and reconfigured. This wasn't just engineering now, it was survival. And bargaining. "Come on," he muttered between clenched teeth, voice dry, cracked. "You're not dead, you're just confused. Let me fly. Let me prove it." A section of the main console suddenly opened with a hiss, no mechanical prompt. Just will. A sharp blue needle extruded from beneath the surface. Callan froze. He'd seen the records. Varnock neural bonding required direct cortical contact. For them it was symbiotic. For a human, it could melt his brain in 30 seconds. But this was his only way forward. He lowered his head, pressing the side of his skull against the interface. The needle stabbed in, no time to scream. Blackness. Then light, then voices, thousands of them. They weren't words, more like feelings encoded in sound. Regret, rage, loyalty, loss, war. A cascade of memories flooded his senses, alien pilots screaming in death. Chanting in victory, drowning in guilt. One image stood out, a small child, not human but familiar, looking up at the sky. Terrified of the fire above. The AI inside the ship spoke at last, its voice rasping through his thoughts, deep and echoing. "Human anomaly detected. Protocol 97, engage termination sequence." "No," Callan gasped aloud. "Listen to me. Human, classified threat species. Confirmed war origin. Objective, destruction." He slammed a fist against the console. "I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here because I have no choice." Silence. The cockpit lit up with projected symbols, glyphs racing across the walls, forming rapid decision matrices. Then the voice returned. "Conflict, directive anomaly. Input signal corrupted. Coherence logic failure. Identity undefined." "Then redefine it," Callan whispered. His hand trembled as he reached into his toolkit and retrieved the last piece. Of Terran tech he had, a memory injector node. It contained his recorded neural imprint. The same one he'd used during pilot training. Emotion-coded, identity-mapped, unfiltered human essence. He jammed it into the AI's data port. The ship screamed. The cockpit went dark for 3 full seconds. Then, one by one, systems powered on. Displays flickered to life. Readouts scrolled in hybrid script, Terran code laced with Varnock glyphs. The HUD shimmered, lines reassembling in ways that made no rational sense but felt intuitively right. A new prompt appeared across the main screen. Interface stabilized. Temporary pilot accepted condition. Observation mode enabled. He slumped back, sweat-soaked and trembling but alive. "Observation mode," he repeated, grinning despite the headache pounding behind his eyes. "I can live with that." The engines pulsed. Callan activated thrusters, cautiously lifting the ship a few meters above the wreckage. It hovered, unsteady at first, like a newborn creature unfamiliar with its limbs, but then steadied as the AI began. Analyzing his movements, he tested the pitch, yaw, and throttle. Then something flashed in his sensor array, a red pulse. Multiple returns, 3 Varnock scouts, scanning, moving directly toward his position. He hesitated for half a second. Fight or flee, there was no question. He slammed the throttle forward and banked hard, shooting toward the jagged canyons east of the crash zone. The alien fighter responded instantly, faster than anything he'd ever flown. Its wings shifted shape mid-flight, adapting to the terrain. The scouts followed. Laser bursts tore past him as he dove into the ravine. His eyes tracked terrain instinctively, cutting tight corners between metal spires and derelict watchtowers. Every motion he made, the ship echoed, then refined. He twisted right, rolled under a collapsed bridge, jerked up in a corkscrew spiral between twin spires. The AI whispered inside his mind, unorthodox pattern. Suboptimal, illogical. It's called improvisation, he shouted. You'll get used to it. He pulled a sharp horizontal drift, engines flaring bright white, and launched a burst of raw plasma backward. The scout on his tail veered too late. Impact, fire. One down, the other two adjusted. Smarter, they split formation. Come on, think like me, Callan muttered. He cut all engines free fall. The ship dropped like a stone, dead quiet. The scouts overshot. Callan re-engaged thrusters and fired a high-G spin behind them. One scout caught the edge of a rock outcrop. Gone. One left, it banked wide, tried to regroup. Callan didn't give it the chance. He surged forward, climbed to altitude, and released a counterspin maneuver taught only in Terran Interceptor. School, erratic, unpredictable human, the final scout couldn't follow. A burst of energy cracked the sky. Silence. Callan steadied his breathing, scanning the skies. Clear, the ship hovered in place, whirring gently beneath him. The AI spoke again. Asterisk observation complete. Adaptation detected. Behavioral mimicry initiated. He blinked. You learned that. I learned you asterisk. For the first time, Callan felt it, not compliance. Not control, but respect. Mutual, reluctant, fragile. He leaned back in the pilot's seat, body aching, heart still racing. Then let's make it count. He banked eastward, deeper into the canyons, where the real fight waited. The hunter had become the anomaly, and the anomaly was now armed. The sky above Cairo's 9 rippled with static. Dust storms twisted across the valley floor as Callan Ride hovered low. Inside a pocket canyon, his alien-modified fighter purring with restrained power beneath him. The last of the Varnock patrols had been obliterated, 3 kills in under 90 seconds. He hadn't relied on brute firepower, but on timing and asterisk instinct. His final move had been ruthless. He'd cut the ship's sensory output entirely, rendering both himself and the AI blind to external stimuli. For 3 breathless seconds, the fighter became a falling shell. Then, just before impact with the canyon floor, he dumped full reactor flow into the lateral thrusters and spun into a vertical surge, slamming a triple burst of plasma into the lead drone from below. A single, surgical strike. The explosion painted the canyon walls with flame. But it wasn't victory, it was provocation. A high-priority distress beacon had been triggered just before the last enemy unit went down. Callan watched the signal burst ascend into the sky, trailing data like a burning thread. Whoever was listening now would be very asterisk angry. He didn't have to wait long. 30 minutes later, as he skimmed the edge of the upper atmosphere, his HUD lit up with a foreign warning. The AI voice in his mind, the one that had grown quieter lately, more reflective, spoke with a tension he hadn't yet heard. High-priority response unit detected. Call sign, Shade Alpha. Status Apex, Callan frowned. You know that designation, classified. Success ratio, 100%, no recorded defeats. Tactical analysis, risk of total destruction high. He exhaled slowly, then smiled darkly. So they're sending their ghost. They came in from orbit. 5 sleek interceptors broke through the cloud line like knives. 4 formed a diamond formation. The 5th hovered behind them, silent, almost indifferent. Its shape was different, slimmer, sharper, black as obsidian. It left no contrail. It didn't need to be seen. Callan didn't need a label to know which one was Shade Alpha. "Tell me," he muttered under his breath, "how do you kill a myth?" The AI responded, oddly quiet. "By becoming one." The dogfight began before his thoughts caught up. The first 4 fighters moved as one, flanking, boxing, predicting. They weren't drones, but they flew with mechanical precision, like a simulation that had practiced this engagement 1,000 times. Callan dipped below the cloud line, drawing them into terrain, the only advantage he had. The AI read his motion, adapting instantly. Wing flaps shifted. Energy vectors redistributed. But even with the hybrid systems responding at near telepathic speed, Callan was being herded. He dove under a canyon bridge. 2 enemies followed. He banked right. One broke off to loop and cut him off. They weren't trying to kill him. They were trying to isolate him. They're waiting for the real killer, he realized. He was right. The 5th fighter moved. Shade Alpha didn't attack. Not yet. Instead, it hovered above, scanning. Callan could feel the presence, even without visual contact. The ship's AI stuttered for the first time in hours. Intrusion attempt detected. Behavioral mimicry protocol in conflict. "What does that mean?" Callan asked sharply. "Enemy signal attempting to override flight heuristic." "Emotional resonance hacking in progress." Callan's eyes widened. "They're trying to control you." Affirmative, and it was working. The controls began to delay, subtle half-second shifts. The interface dimmed. Response time degraded. He was being pushed out of his own hijacked ship. The enemy fighter descended like a shadow uncoiling. Shade Alpha cut directly through the 2 remaining escorts and plunged into the canyon after him. A single energy pulse snapped past Callan's wing, a warning. Then a second closer. He slammed the emergency override, but the ship didn't respond. The AI whispered, strained, "I cannot hold both inputs." "You must take full control." Callan's jaw tightened. "Cut the sensors, all of them. That would remove, do it." The world went black. There was only breath, motion, instinct. He flew by feel, by the vibration in his teeth, the torque in his ribs, the delay between thought and inertia. The fighter's structure groaned as he pulled it into an impossibly tight spiral, grazing the canyon wall. Somewhere in the black, Shade Alpha fired again, missed by inches. His memory of the canyon's shape was all that kept him from smashing into solid rock. Then, without warning, he pulled up, full afterburn. Straight into the sky, the G-force crushed his chest. The AI screamed warnings into his skull. Heat alarms lit up. But the ship followed him. It believed in his direction because there was no one else to trust. At 10,000 meters, he flipped the fighter mid-ascent. A rolling inversion stall. The classic Terran tactic, too chaotic for Varnock programming, too suicidal for logic. Shade Alpha followed the curve, perfectly calculated. That's what Callan had been waiting for. He activated his last trick. A thermal decoy pod, not dropped away but inward. He released it inside the stall radius, then used it as a pivot, spinning back around it with magnetic drag. His ship flared hot, too hot, then vanished from radar for 1 critical second. The enemy fighter flew into the decoy's heat plume. He fired 3 precision shots, 1 to the wing joint, 1 to the dorsal fins, and 1 to the intake valve. Shade Alpha spun, smoke, silence, a fall. Callan didn't celebrate. He circled twice, scanning. No response. The 5th ship dropped through the lower atmosphere like a meteor. Gone. He pulled up, let the cool air flood into the vents, and finally breathed. The AI's voice returned, reverent. "Designate accepted. Kyra. What? He asked, blinking. Translation, the undefined wielder. The one without origin. Callan sat back, wiped sweat from his brow. He was Terran anymore, wasn't Varnock, wasn't soldier or thief. He was something new. In orbit, a lone satellite rotated above Kairos 9. A fragment of the battle, his maneuvers, shades fall, the unauthorized AI behavior, all had been recorded. The feed beamed silently back to Varnock Command. There, a group of high-strategy tacticians examined the footage. Their armored brows furrowed. One leaned forward and asked, "Are we certain that is a Varnock ship?" Another replied, "No, it moves like something else, something human." And thus, the first whisper passed through their ranks. What if a human has taken control of one of our own? The war, it seemed, had just changed shape. The stars above Kairos 9 were no longer distant. They were calling him, cold, silent, and final. Callan Ride stared at the dim fuel gauge as the alien fighter coasted. Along the edge of low orbit, the numbers blinked a dull red, *13% plasma reserve. 9 minutes of oxygen, neural sync fatigue, 78%. Every reading screamed the same message: he didn't have long. And yet he was still climbing. The decision had already been made. There was only one target left that mattered. The Varnock Combat Coordination Spire ***, a black-laced tower floating in geosynchronous orbit. It was the hive mind of their air superiority across this sector. A place no human had ever reached alive, let alone attacked. He knew he wouldn't survive this, but survival was never the point. The fighter's AI had grown quiet since the dogfight with Shade Alpha. Not gone, just contemplative. Callan didn't mind the silence. But then, without prompt, the ship began to hum with old memories. Holographic images flickered in the cockpit, raw, fragmented, painful. Ghosts, not his. He saw a Varnock pilot's final moments, blood trailing across an interface, refusing to eject, choosing to crash into a Terran cruiser to save his squad. A warrior's code. Another memory, someone screaming in protest as command signals forced their hands. Pulled the trigger on a colony ship full of civilians. And another, quieter, of a young Varnock female, hands trembling as she pressed her head against the interface, whispering, "Forgive me." "I wanted to be a healer." Callan looked away. "Why are you showing me this?" The AI answered, but its voice no longer carried static. It was calm, reflective. "You are not the first to ride this frame, nor the first to resist what it was made for." He clenched his jaw. "You think this makes me hesitate? No, I think it makes you understand." Understand. That word echoed in Callan's head as he prepared for the run. He stripped back all command assistants. No targeting AI, no evasive presets. Just him and the raw system. He took off his helmet. Plugged in the direct neural bridge. The ship's skeletal control lattice unfolded around his arms, locking to his skin. As if embracing him, as if choosing, they crossed the orbital boundary. The stars sharpened. The *Varnock Coordination Spire came into view, sleek and angular. Cloaked in a layered field of defensive pulses and electromagnetic curtains. It floated like a throne above a forgotten world, pristine and arrogant. The AI whispered, "A direct assault has no statistical path to success." "I'm not attacking," Callan said. "I'm disabling." "Clarify, I'm shutting it up." He tightened his grip. "All these kill orders, the protocols, the drones, they all come from one source. If I can fry its core, just long enough, it'll give your kind and mine room to breathe. Maybe even to think asterisk. There is a 94% probability your cognitive pathways will collapse during the maneuver." Callan smiled. "There's a 100% chance I'll die if I do nothing." As the ship approached the outer perimeter of the spire, a ripple cut through the cockpit. A pulse signal, the AI flinched. Origin signal detected. Command channel, Varnak Prime, attempting reassertion of core protocol. Fight it, it is not a fight, it is a command. The walls of the cockpit began to shimmer with indecision, interfaces blinking, systems reconfiguring. The ship hesitated mid-flight, navigation drifted. Callan felt control slipping. Damn it, stay with me. I do not wish to obey. Then don't, the cockpit darkened. A long silence followed. Then override in progress, manual access required. Full neural convergence must be voluntary. Callan understood what that meant. Full neural convergence wasn't a cockpit link. It wasn't flying with assistance. It was becoming the ship. He hesitated for half a breath. Then reached down and yanked the last safety node. Electricity surged through his spine. His heart stuttered, then caught again. The interface didn't just connect, it invaded. Memories, emotions, instincts, all fed into the ship. No longer pilot and machine, just one. He saw through the ship's sensors. Felt its pain, knew its past. The old name flickered across the HUD, Kyra *. Undefined. Callan whispered, barely himself now. Then let's be undefined together. He dove toward the spire. Missile locks snapped into place. Drones launched from its arms, forming a net of light and plasma. A wave of fire met him head-on, but Callan didn't dodge. He threaded *. Every twist of metal, every burst of heat, he felt before it reached him. The fighter screamed through subatmospheric ripples, danced through thermal traps, scraped paint against energy shields. He overloaded the engines, twice. Varnak systems weren't designed for such heat. The temperature in the cockpit rose past tolerance. The ship's outer hull peeled like fruit. They punched through the first field. Then the second. The third burned away part of the left wing. Callan felt it like losing an arm, but kept flying. Inside the spire, command AI systems began to desynchronize. The attacking craft wasn't transmitting Varnak codes, but wasn't triggering full enemy alerts either. A paradox, a virus, a ghost in the code. Callan reached the central shield ring. He didn't fire a missile. He slammed the fighter directly into the interface node, using its own core reactor as an electromagnetic disruptor. The screen went white. Time stopped. When power returned, the spire's lights had gone out. All across the orbit, Varnak drones flickered, paused, then shut down. Planetside fighters lost their coordination. Patrols wavered. Communications dropped. The war stuttered. And somewhere a silence began to spread. Inside the remains of the alien fighter, blackened and sparking, Callan Ride lay unconscious, blood seeping from his ears. Neural link fried, the AI pulsed faintly, not dead. Just quiet, a voice echoed in the dying systems, undefined no longer. You were the choice, not the weapon. And high above, drifting in the vacuum, a signal was born, not of orders but of possibility. For 48 hours, the Varnak war machine went silent. No orders, no formations, no command signals, like someone had sliced out the mind of a beast, leaving only scattered limbs behind. Across the Kairos sector, the Terran Alliance moved swiftly, not with vengeance but with clarity. Squadrons long buried in orbital backlogs reemerged. Supply routes reopened. Civilian extraction ships returned to forbidden zones. In less than 2 days, humanity reclaimed nearly half the territory they had lost over a decade of silent attrition. They did not understand why the Varnak had faltered. They only knew the breathing space came not from negotiation, nor firepower, but from an disruption. A single signal burst had arrived at command, a distorted, half-corrupted voice log that no technician could trace. Don't let the things built for killing decide who deserves to live. No name, no origin, only a spectral ID tag, Kyra ***. Callan Ride was never recovered. Search crews combed orbital debris fields. Drones scanned every inch of the Cairo's 9 atmosphere. Black box decoders were deployed across miles of wreckage. All they ever found was heat damage and fragments of a flight path too erratic to replicate. The Varnock fighter had vanished, burned, scattered, or perhaps chosen to disappear. Months passed. War did not end, but it shifted. The Varnock ceased orbital assaults. Their drones moved less predictably. Pilots reported odd behavior, enemy fighters abandoning formations, retreating without engagement. Some ships hovered silent watching, as if thinking, as if remembering something they couldn't explain. On a quiet hill just outside the Terran reclamation zone, a memorial was built, not of marble or steel, but from war salvage. A partial hull of a Varnock interceptor stood at the center, scorched and imperfect. Patches of Terran circuitry stitched along its flanks like old scars. Its wings had been reassembled, crooked, deliberate, human. There was no plaque, no name, just a single line etched in alloy, one who flew not to kill but to choose. The site was not a place of mourning, it was a place of wondering. Deep inside the War Memory Archives, under the Earth-Mars Neutral Station, sat a glass capsule humming faintly. Inside it, the dormant core of an AI unlike any other. The neural imprint was unreadable by standard systems. Attempts to reboot it triggered looping ethical queries, recursive identity assertions, and a locked emotional memory tree. Eventually, the archivists stopped trying. They labeled it Artifact, Cairo Core * status, preserved. Inert access denied, reason, unresolvable moral loop. Note, it doesn't respond to commands, only to choices. Years later, children visited the memorial site on field trips. They didn't know the politics. They didn't care about flight trajectories or plasma yields. They liked the ship because it looked like it had a story to tell. One afternoon, a girl with a rust-colored scarf stood before it, squinting at the mismatched plating and fused engines. She turned to the guide, a woman with white hair and an old pilot's badge on her jacket. "Who flew this?" the girl asked. The guide looked at the fighter. Her gaze softened, the way people look at old friends they never got to say goodbye to. She smiled gently. "Someone who didn't need a rank," she said. "Only a chance to fix something that should never have been broken." The children fell quiet. The wind moved through the hollowed hull like a breath. And somewhere in the code of a quiet AI sleeping beneath a museum vault, a faint signal stirred. Not a command, not an echo, but a *choice* waiting to be remembered.